Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. What do you think about me and my little Ball State Scully or hat? Anyway, happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining me. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. Can you feel it? The world is changing. Our culture is changing. The wicked people are collapsing right before our very eyes. They're desperate. They're chaotic. They're out of control. We're winning. And listen, I'm as cynical a person as there is on the planet. This is a great time to be alive. This is a moment of great optimism. We're winning. Our work isn't done, but we're winning. That's what today's show will be about. We'll start right here in the sports world, as I keep telling you all that everything you can see, everything going on in the world, you can see it through the lens of sports. We'll start there, and then I'll just start connecting the dots. I'm going to connect the dots between Nick Bosa, BET, and Joe Biden. Bosa, BET, and Biden. Or is it Bosa, Biden, and BET? I'm about to connect all these dots. And that's why you're here today, because no one else in the sports world can do this and does it on a consistent basis. Make sure you're telling your friends. We can talk sports, we can talk politics, we can combine it all together and have it all make sense. And you can understand the world by understanding the sports world. Number one thing you can do, if you like me, like the content of this show, you need to go to fearlessmission.com, become a subscriber to Fearless Mission, use my promo code FEARLESS40. You save $40 on your yearly subscription. You get access to everything that we do here at Fearless. Shemeka and I tape some Fearless Extra. TJ Moe and I tape some Fearless Extra. You have to be a subscriber to get that extra content. It's the best thing you can do to support me, this show, this movement, and to celebrate this time that we're in right now. We have so much wind at our back. And I want you guys pushing us even further and further. Look, you want access. The only place, The Blaze, is covering the election in magnificent, provocative, thoughtful, insightful ways. Become a Fearless Mission subscriber. You'll get access to all of that. The election night coverage is going to be tremendous. I'm going to be a part of the election night coverage. That's going to be tremendous. I was hoping my house was going to be done so that I could throw a big election party and celebrate. I'm not overconfident, but I'm confident. And I'm going to tell you what, let me connect all the dots. Let me just get straight into today's show of why I'm so confident. There is chaos and panic throughout the left, and you can see it in the National Football League. Nick Bosa, defensive end for the San Francisco 49ers. He flashed a MAGA hat at the end, not even at the end of the game, during the post-game interviews on the field after the football game on Sunday Night Football, 49ers Cowboys. He comes up in a MAGA hat. You can barely even see the MAGA because it was a white hat and the lettering was different. It wasn't a typical red MAGA hat, but he went up there and he pointed to it. And now they're trying to turn this into a big deal. And this is part of their desperation. This is part of the chaos. This is a part of, like, holy cow, we're in trouble here. How can we turn nothing into something? This collapse of the Democrat Party and of the left movement, I've lived 57 years. I've never seen anything like it. Now, I've never seen anything like the last 10, 12 years where all the Black Lives Matter, all the Marxist stuff, but wow, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and we are living it right now. the Democrat Party is not trying to win this election. They know they're not winning this election. They know that. They're trying to save the Democrat Party right now. That's all they're trying to save face, trying to uplift and have their party be viable after this Trump landslide. And the NFL is an important part of that. Jim Trotter of The Athletic, he's a sports writer, used to be with the San Diego Union Tribune, used to be with Sports Illustrated, used to work at ESPN, used to work at the NFL Network. He got laid off from the NFL Network and sued the National Football League for racism. He said getting laid off for him was racist, and it was because he asked Roger Goodell questions about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's why he got fired. He's now landed at The Athletic, and now he's at odds with The Athletic. Now he wrote a column criticizing the NFL and trying to push the NFL. You must take action against Nick Bosa. This is racism. He wore a MAGA hat for 2 seconds or a second and a half during a post-game interview. He must be disciplined. If not, you're racist because you did something to Colin Kaepernick. You blackballed Colin Kaepernick. This is racism. This is people grasping at straws. The whole theme of today's show is D's desperate Dems nuts. D's desperate Dems nuts. I can't believe we spelled D's with an S. Someone white did that? Ren, I got to blame you for that. So he's raising his hand. Justin, how did you not overrule Ren when he spelled D? Luke, am I wrong? Would a black man have spelled D's with an S?
No.
Yeah, I'm surprised Ren didn't use an apostrophe, D-E-E apostrophe S. Like he's talking about some woman, D's. I mean, what are we doing here? Everybody knows D's is spelled with a Z. D's desperate Dems nuts. That's what this show's about. This is how desperate they are. Jim Trotter's the one in the middle. That's D.L. Hughley, down low Hughley on the left, and Barack Obama on the right. And the nut is at the bottom, Kamala Harris. And she's got her mouth open. It looks like she's trying to, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to get myself in trouble. People are already, I've been a bit too raw. I've mastered my language and I'm away from profanity, but I do think in terms of politically incorrect analogies and thoughts, and I'm trying to clean it up, but these desperate Dems, they're nuts. And Jim Trotter is at the top of the list right now. He's a agent provocateur. He's an agitator. He's a Trojan horse. He's a idiot just trying to stir things constantly. And I used to like Jim Trotter. I don't know what happened to Jim Trotter. This was a very rational person that I used to know. To see him go from, hey, the NFL Network laid me off, and Jim Trotter's my age. Guys my age have been getting laid off in journalism forever. For the last 15, 20 years, they've been wiping us out and replacing us with young people. It's going on all throughout corporate America. Everybody, you get over 50 and they start thinking, hey, we can get some 25-year-old to replace you. But anyway, it's all racism, and that's why the NFL Network let him go. Now, The Athletic has, according to Jim Trotter, watered down his column complaining about the NFL and why they must discipline Nick Bosa for wearing a MAGA hat. I want to read a couple of excerpts from Jim's column in The Athletic that he says was watered down. He first blamed the New York Times, which owns The Athletics. Then he put out a clarifying tweet saying, I shouldn't have blamed the New York Times. It's the Athletic that did it. But they watered it down because I can't, it must, I read the column that's been published and it sounds like the ramblings of a lunatic and someone that, again, it's not the Jim Trotter I used to know. It's just a guy screaming, racism, 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 I'm a victim. And oh my God, there's a double standard. These white NFL owners, they pay these players hundreds of millions of dollars, but secretly they're racist. And they just want to stop Colin Kaepernick. And oh, it's so hard. Jim, cut it out. Here's a couple of excerpts from his piece that was watered down. I would love to know what they cut out. Did he just call everybody, these cracker MF, crackers? Maybe that's what they cut out. I don't know. But here's an failure to take some sort of action would suggest the presence of a double standard and raise the question of whether the league is more comfortable with a white player using its national spotlight to endorse a presidential candidate than it is with black players demonstrating against systemic racism. He enters things in as facts that aren't facts. He's demonstrating against systemic racism. There's not 100% agreement that there is systemic racism. There's not. I know Jim Trotter and his group have all said, oh, there's systemic racism, and that's a fact. Well, there's other people say, no, there isn't systemic racism. There's something called sin. It's in the Bible. It's a foundational fact and truth. Sin. Jim and his group have systemic racism. Now, there's not universal agreement. Like, everybody pretty much agrees today is Wednesday. That's a fact. It's an opinion that Colin Kaepernick was protesting against systemic racism. Colin Kaepernick, in my opinion, was throwing a tantrum because he lost his job to Blaine Gabbert. There is no equivalence between what Nick Bosa did, wearing a hat in support of a presidential candidate, and a guy taking a knee during the national anthem to allegedly complain that somebody, Michael Brown or somebody, Trayvon Martin, I don't know, someone got killed. And it's the police's fault, it's America's fault, because some resisting black criminal got killed. Those are opinions, not facts. And so Jim's writing this about, well, God, everybody knows he was fighting systemic racism. First of all, there's people that don't believe in systemic racism. And two, there are people like me that don't believe that Colin Kaepernick was doing anything but throwing a tantrum and drawing attention to himself and calling the NFL I lost my starting quarterback job. They're racist. Guess who else is doing that? Jim Trotter. I lost my job at the NFL Network. They're racist. Anytime a liberal black man fails, it is systemic racism's fault. There are people that don't buy that. I'm one of them. I don't buy that. Jim Trotter then goes on to say, the concern is whether the NFL might show it has a double standard when it comes to political expressions by players. Now, I just want to stop, and I'm going to reread this. Go back, but I want to reread this because it sounds like I'm just repeating myself. But I'm really just repeating what Jim Trotter wrote. He had so little content that he just had to keep repeating the same point. It's like a child stamping his feet. If I just sit here and cry and whine long enough, they'll believe me. This sounds like the previous paragraph, but anyway, let me read it again. The concern is whether the NFL might show it has a double standard when it comes to political expressions by players. Kaepernick gets blackballed for fighting for social justice. And Bosa gets what? ignored by the league and applauded by far-right supporters who otherwise demand that athletes, specifically black athletes, stick to sports. Let's say Colin Kaepernick, Jim, let's say Colin Kaepernick had said, I'm pro-Barack Obama, and wore a hat that said, I'm pro-Barack Obama. There would be no controversy. Yeah, you got the little fake afro, you're a mixed nut, you dating some Egyptian white woman and looking for your black moment. Everybody would just say, yeah, okay, you support Barack Obama, no big deal. The man took a knee during the national anthem and basically called America systemically racist. And there are people that love this country who don't believe that, who were offended. You dragged the national anthem into it. Nick Bosa hasn't dragged anybody or anything into it other than himself. He's endorsing Donald Trump. Colin Kaepernick was taking a dump on all of America and politicizing and making the national anthem a divisive issue. It's completely different. Jim Trotter knows it. Everybody knows it. And all this, oh my God, if they would just shut up and dribble. If Nick Bosa starts giving speeches about, hey, this is what we should do in Ukraine, and this is the significance of what's going on between Hamas and Israel, yes, I will stand up and say, hey, Nick, you're way out over your skis, buddy. Just go tackle the quarterback. But in this country, if the man wants to say, hey, I think you should vote for Donald Trump, I got no problem with that. If he wanted to say, I think you vote for Kamala Harris, I would think he's an idiot, but no one would care. There would be no controversy. Colin Kaepernick can endorse whatever political candidate he wants in the NFL. And then here's the other thing. They're acting like Colin Kaepernick spent the entire season taking a knee, game after game after game after game. It wasn't like, oh, Colin Kaepernick took a knee and the NFL, they blackballed him, they ran him out of the league. No, the man collected a check for the rest of the year, and then people decided, hey, bro, you're not worth the hassle. There's too much controversy. I don't want to be answering questions about your political stances and your social justice warrior. I want to answer questions about football. I don't want my whole team immersed in your political movement. And so people didn't want to put up with Colin Kaepernick. He wasn't that good. Nick Bosa is one of the best defensive ends in the league. They're going to tolerate him wearing a MAGA hat because he makes plays and helps the 49ers win games. They're doing this, here's my point, these desperate Dems, nuts. They're so desperate to spark some sort of chaos. They're hoping and praying, they're on knees right now. This football weekend has to be full of chaos and full of political unrest. This weekend is what they're trying to spark something. And Jim Trotter is trying to help them do that. They want every player trying to make some sort of political statement this weekend, and they want it to devolve into chaos and division within locker rooms and on teams. They want players fighting on the field. They want fans fighting in the stands. They want to turn this weekend's football games into political rallies. That's how desperate these Dem nuts are. They are desperate. And it's glorious to see. And that's why I'm so optimistic. You don't get this kind of desperate unless you're losing. And you're losing in an enormous fashion. They're pulling out all the stops. Oh my God, he wore a MAGA hat. The NFL must fine him. They must discipline him. If they don't, they're racist. That's all they have. They have no policies to talk about. I'm going to tell you how I'm going to pivot off of Bosa and move to BET. Last night, D.L. Hughley, one of these desperate dim nuts, he hosted a Black Men Summit on BET. BET stands for Black Entertainment Television, and it's a political organ and tool. And they had a Black Men Summit where they only invited black men who think one way. There's a Black Men Summit of men who all think the same thing. And they call this bold conversation, and it's going to be all this debate. And it's a group of cowards who don't want to face any resistance, who don't want to engage with anybody that might argue the other side. It's a group of male feminists. It's a group of men who worship women. Listen to this clip of these guys talking about, it wasn't masculinity that got us here. It was your mama. It was your grandmama. You better thank and drop to your knees and thank these women for all that they did for you. This is a group of very secular people who don't understand who actually deserves all the glory. And it's God. But they think it's their mama and their grandmama to let them stay in their house until they was 25, 26 years old and treated them like they husband rather than their sons, ran their daddies out of the house. But play the clip.
And I think we got to be honest in our own community about the reality of sexism and the role that patriarchy plays in our own community. Sure. I go to churches a lot, and there are people who will greet me and not greet my fiance, who's standing right next to me. So there's a real conversation we need to have about what is going on inside of our communities and what we can do to make sure that we unlearn some of the behaviors that are really negative, and that are really harmful. What is also really important is that we do understand the facts. An overwhelming majority of black men are voting for Vice President Kamala Harris to be President of the United States. Right? 80% of us. So, the truth is, you got that one uncle that you need to talk to. But the majority of us, we good. Like, we on the same page. And I will say this about Donald. In our country, our socialization has taught us to praise people with a lot of money. Our socialization has taught us to praise people who are famous. Our socialization has taught us to praise people who can get a lot of women and can say what they want and do what they want and have said, hey, that's the image of a real man. That's the image of a strong person. That's the image of a real leader who can just fire people at will. Now he's running for president. And a lot of people are like, wait, no, that's not it anymore. But years of socialization have taught us that actually that is the image that America has put forward as the image of what you want to be, of the person that you want to lead. So it isn't just a black issue. We got a nationwide issue about the perception of hypermasculinity masquerading as leadership, when in fact it was our mamas and our grandmamas and our great-grandmamas who got us here.
It wasn't man, it was your mamas and your grandmamas and your great-grandmamas that got us here. That's I think his last name's Pearson. He lives right here in Nashville. He's the guy that, when they took over the local Senate floor here in Nashville, he's an actor, and he's a paid agitator. He's a communist. He's a leftist. He's a Marxist, fake afro, he's the political Colin Kaepernick. And this is the mentality. It's not man who did anything. It's not male leadership. That's masculinity. It was your mama, your grandmama, and your great-grandmama. They deserve all the credit. I love my grandmother, love my mother. But damn it, I know the truth. If we had been waiting on women to build America, we've been waiting on women to do anything, none of it would have happened. And that's not, I'm not disrespecting women, but they don't build anything. They nurture and develop children. And it's perhaps the greatest, most important task in the history of the planet, nurturing, developing children. We've denigrated that. We've denigrated what they're on this earth to do. Convince them there's no value in that, when it is the most valuable thing they have to offer, and perhaps arguably the most valuable thing in life. We've denigrated that to make them, convince them, and now you got to be men. And now men are worshiping women. This is desperation. This was a group of beta males sitting around having a conversation about why they love Kamala Harris and why Donald Trump is evil. It was an abortion rally for black men. They actually argued that a black man having a child sets young black men back. They actually argued this. This is a pro-abortion argument. And like, we need abortion so black men can kill their babies, or the women can kill their babies that these men have. No. What's setting black men back is having premarital sex, having sex with women they have no intention of marrying, not putting a condom on, not abstaining, not promoting and going for marriage. That's what's setting us back. This child sacrifice, this abortion thing is going to send us straight to hell. Play the clip.
Kenny, man, do black men see reproductive rights as an important issue?
I think here we all believe that black women will say the planet correct.
Yeah.
We also believe that, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we come from a black woman, they should have rights to their bodies. We should not be in control of any woman's bodies. And as far as men are concerned, you know, a lot of young men aren't ready to be fathers. And with this happening, you know, it would put them into a place that they're not ready for.
Vic, what do you think? What do you think about that?
Many men I spoke to felt that women's reproductive rights were important to them, but not their top priority.
Sure.
However, the fact remains that maternal mortality rates amongst black women are exponentially higher in states with Republican-led abortion bans. As black men, our primary responsibility in this humanity is to protect black women.
Yes, indeed.
That's why we're here.
No, your primary duty is to follow God, to fear and follow God. That's the whole duty of man. Check with the Bible if you don't believe me. Those are not my words. You've been brainwashed into believing that serving women is your duty. That's not, you're not a helpmeet. She is. You've got the whole thing upside down. And arguing that killing babies through abortion is good for black men, good for the planet, good for anybody. You're so far removed from a biblical worldview, you're so far removed from God that you've become satanic. You've been given over to a reprobate mind. Period, end of story. This Black Men Summit was an embarrassment, but it was the rally that they held trying to prop up the Democrat Party. Hey, the Democrat Party, we're not losing black voters. Because I'm telling you, that's all this thing is about at this point. They want to post a number, they know they're going to lose the election, and they want to be able to say that black people didn't abandon the Democrat Party, so they can then argue that, nope, this is proof, black people voted for Democrats and Trump won, therefore America is racist. That's all they have at this point. This is a total collapse of the Democrat Party. They're trying to avoid it by sucking black men into supporting the Democrats. And so they don't want the narrative to be like, it's so bad, even black people left the Democrat Party. They want the narrative to be that black people and all voted for Democrats. White people voted for Donald Trump. America is racist. It's systemic racism. This is what did Van Jones, blacklash from Kamala Harris, who's not black. And, so they did their little abortion rally, and then finally they kept up the whole Black Lives Matter. Oh my God, we're just not safe. Oh, the police, every time we get pulled over, they just try to lynch and kill us. Oh, we just so worried about being safe. Crips and Bloods, they're our best friends. Gangster disciples, vice lords, oh, they're our best friends. These Negroes that kill us, oh, they love us. It's the police that twice a year they kill one of us. And oh my God, at that rate, at 2 killings per year, don't you know in 2 billion years, we'll be eliminated from the planet? It's genocide. They're killing us 20 times a year, and they're gonna wipe us all out. Play the clip.
Furthermore, this is the same individual, if we're talking about who should we trust to keep our community safe, wants to provide police officers with full immunity to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do whenever you feel like a situation arises that requires you to not use best practices, whether that be using patience, calling a mental health professional, but if you believe a person needs to be shot down like a dog in the street, you do so and you won't have to face any consequences. So when we talk about a matter of safety, a matter of keeping our community safe, you have a person who literally just rambles and acts off of emotion, compared to an individual who's saying that I candidly want to use legislation and policy to find ways to not only keep our community safe, but help us thrive in every way imaginable.
You said something that I very rarely hear black men say, safe.
Yeah.
And when we use it in that context, it's never for us. You've never, no, I'm just talking about in your lexicon, when have you ever said the notion of safety is something somebody else gets to have and you don't? But it is because it's so far removed, the concept. You started to say something like that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. What you were just saying just triggered something in me, and that is like what we're worried about her record as a prosecutor, and we want to attach her to a bunch of incarcerations that didn't exist. And yet, if you look at the 2 candidates, and you look at the George Floyd situation, which one is more likely to pardon the killers of George Floyd? Which one?
That's the question.
Wow.
Make your decision on who to vote for president based off of whether a career criminal who injected enough fentanyl to kill Secretariat and Seabiscuit resisted police for 20, 30 minutes, armed robbery of a black woman. Base your decision on whether the people that were standing around as he died of a fentanyl overdose, you should vote for president based off of who might let Derek Chauvin out of prison or them 3 other cops that did absolutely nothing. And literally, at some point they talk about people making decisions off emotions rather than logic and policy. That was just an emotional appeal. Michael Ealy, none of them clowns there. None of them would, if George Floyd was resurrected from the dead today, they would run from him. And if he moved into their neighborhood, trust me, they'd be like, man, I'm in the wrong white gated community. Let me move to another white gated community to get away from George Floyd. These are clowns. That thing last night was an embarrassment for the Democrat Party. It was an embarrassment for black men. It was a bunch of betas sitting around. It was a circle jerk among betas. They're desperate. They have nothing. They're not trying to win the election. They're trying to save the Democrat Party. And saving the Democrat Party means keeping the myth alive that the Republican Party is the KKK and Adolf Hitler and Nazis all rolled into one. They can't keep that lie together if black people abandon the Democrat Party. That's all they're trying to do. What a time to be alive. It's so bad that Joe Biden, he's so upset about the way the Democrat Party did him. He, since they kicked him to the curb, has done everything in his power to undermine the Democrat Party, including putting out an immediate tweet that he's endorsing Kamala Harris to replace him as president. And ever since then, he's been one gaffe after another. Anything he can do to throw a banana peel on Kamala Harris and the Democrat Party, he's been doing. There's total chaos in the Democrat Party. If there's ever a true history written, if there's ever a 30 for 30 documentary, if there's ever Netflix or anybody ever does an honest documentary, we will be looking back at this. This is the Fire Festival. That's what this is, the Fire Festival. And Joe Biden is starting fires and throwing banana peels and trying to undermine the party that sold him out. Here he is last night or yesterday calling me, you, and everybody else that supports Donald Trump garbage. We're the garbage people. Play the clip.
Tonight, there's new reporting about Joe Biden and a moment that explains why things are the way that they are. Sources tell CNN that the president is in do no harm mode, stapling himself to the bench at the direction of the Harris campaign. Well, even from the White House, he may have done some pretty significant harm in the final week of the campaign. Just listen to this, and you be the judge.
And just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Well, let me tell you something. I don't know the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done, everything we've been.
Joining us now, Franklin Leonard. He is in our fifth seat. He's the founder and CEO of the Blacklist. That was a moment, and not a moment that the Harris campaign wanted. I want to just read. This is Biden on X trying to clarify all of this. He says, earlier today I referenced to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump's supporters at his Madison Square Garden rally as garbage, which is the only word I can think of to describe it. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. That's all I meant to say.
The reason why, just connecting all the dots, let's go Bosa, BET, Biden. The reason why black people are central to everything they're doing in the media. The reason why Jim Trotter is now the athletics racist, they wouldn't let me go after Bosa the way that I wanted to. Let's hold a black summit. Let's don't invite anybody that disagrees with anything the Democrat Party is doing. We'll call it a black summit. Let's put on a front that all black men are in support of the Democrat Party. And then CNN and everybody's got their little black puppets to host shows and guests. Black, 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 black. Because they know they're going to lose, and they're trying to put on a front that we're losing because of racism. And if black people vote for Donald Trump, that narrative ends and the Democrat Party ceases to exist. They have nothing else. Their alphabet agenda is dependent upon black people and the lie that the Republican Party and conservatives and evangelicals and everybody white and anybody black that agrees with the Republicans or agrees with evangelicals, they're all either racist or they're Uncle Toms and sellouts. That's collapsing in real time. What a time to be alive. This is amazing. We're watching the fall of the satanic, democratic, racist left. I don't know what's going to happen on the other side of this. And maybe all the mail-in ballots and all that stuff they'll throw the election, or they'll create the illusion that black people didn't abandon the Democrat Party. But that's what this is all about. They're not trying to win the election. They're trying to save their party. They're trying to save the narrative that Republicans and conservatives and Christians and evangelicals, we're all racist, or we're all Uncle Toms. That's why I'm optimistic. They're desperate. D's desperate, Dems nuts. And we finally got the D spelled right. Good job, Ren. I'm going to bring Steve Kim on here in a second to talk about the Bosa part of this conversation. Then I'm going to bring Delano on to talk about the BET Summit. But before I do any of that, I want to talk to you guys about Prize Picks. It's the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your players leave in the first half and does not return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Now let's see what Mama Whitlock's picks are. Mom is a awesome. My mom, huge sports fan, loves a little extra money in her pocket. Today she's got some NBA action and tomorrow's Thursday night football game. CJ Stroud, she has more than 225 passing yards. Aaron Rodgers, she's got him throwing at least 1 interception or more. And LeBron James, less than 23.5 points. Download the Prize Picks apps today. Use the promo code FEARLESS and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Steve Kim, next.
It intentionally. He fouled him on purpose, and he did it with intentions. Okay, let's get that out the way. Here's the thing that we have to. Looking at the play,
you can't look at a person. Yeah, but you're making an assumption.
Yes, you can.
You can't look at a person and know what their intent was. It was a dangerous play, regardless. But you can't. Okay. I didn't realize we had a bunch of mind reading on the panel. Please continue.
I know we got to go to break. Welcome to the world of being a woman, Stephen A., and how you have to dance about your word choice and you have to please everybody and anybody as you navigate your being. We are talking about the world's greatest
How about being a black man?
Being black. Hold on 1 second.
Have you?
So this is what I'm saying to y'all, though.
The fact that we are sitting here debating whether somebody else should have been suspended or not, we are not here, Stephen A., to further blame women. That is not why we are here.
First of all, let me be very clear. I don't appreciate where you're going with that. The point that I'm trying to make is just like you're not mentioning. Excuse me. I listened to you. You're the one telling me to stop on my show. It ain't happening. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I've already said he deserves to be fired or he deserves to be there.
Yeah, 모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐. 기다리지 말고 서둘러. Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps. I see that you are 배불러. So fly.
All right, welcome back. Cosell joining us from Los Angeles, TJ Moe and Butter in studio. Cosell, your thoughts on Jim Trotter. He had a problem with the NFL Network. They were racist, and he sued them. Now he seems to have a problem with The Athletic. They watered down his Nick Bosa column. Your thoughts? What's going on here with Jim Trotter?
I have a question. When's the lawsuit being filed? I mean, there seems to be a certain pattern here, and you know, everyone is deserving what they get here. The Athletic should have known what they're getting into. I will say this about Trotter and the way he feels as a writer, because it happened to me at ESPN. When you write something and they alter it to a degree where it changes the tenor of the story and what you mean, and it, regardless of what me and you may think about it, that's the worst feeling in the world as someone that pens a piece, puts time into it, and wants a certain message conveyed. But again, with Jim Trotter, he's perennially aggrieved. And I just think it's interesting. I think Jim Trotter ought to do something that I say to a lot of people. Start a black business. Start jimtrotter.com. You don't like the editing. You don't like the process. Have enough guts to venture out from white corporate media.
The Trotter, Steve, I'm telling you, he was a completely different person 15, 20 years ago. I mean, this is one of the nicest, most professional guys that I've ever met in the business. And now he's a completely different person. And part of what I think, Steve, is that he was a reporter, and that was his natural role as a reporter. He was not an opinion guy. That's not his gift. But because they've destroyed journalism, and no one now is a true reporter anymore, they all have to mix in opinion. He's just out over his skis. He's being asked to do something that he's just not clever enough to do, and that's why a lot of these guys, Jamel Hill, Bomani Jones, all they don't have the talent, so it's racism. That's their one-trick ponies, that it's racism. That's the only way they know how to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm actually interested to see what was the original copy of Jim Trotter, because whether I agree with his views or not, I think you should be allowed to express them and then put them out into the public forum and deal with the reaction and the blowback. Now, again, the Athletic should have known what they were getting into, and it also goes for Jim Trotter. But I think Jim Trotter's job is safe here because, quite frankly, they still need somebody that's going to badger Caitlin Clark for having white fans. So I think his job security, at least for the time being, is pretty secure.
Steve, I disagree with you as it relates to journalism in terms of I'm old enough, you're old enough to remember in the 90s, early 2000s or whatever, there were people that, hey, Jason, we think you're clever enough. We think you know enough about sports. You go ahead and express opinions. Adam Teicher, you're the Chiefs beat reporter. You just report. You're not an opinionist. And so now, because of Twitter, the advent of Twitter, everybody thinks they have to espouse their opinions while representing a journalistic institution. If Jim Trotter wants to, again, just be Jim Trotter and spout off his opinions, no problem. But if he wants to be associated with The Athletic and have them pick up the payments for him traveling to this event and that event, then there are some rules he should have to adhere to as a journalist. And perhaps as a journalist, he's not qualified to espouse opinions. I see this all the time across the board. People do, again, many of these women talking about football, they don't know what they're talking about. And so no wonder they love to talk about people's feelings and love to talk about who's racist or not. Those are all very subjective, and you can just say it, oh, that's systemic racism. You don't have to have any proof. You don't have to have any sources. You just say things, whatever you feel, and boom, now you're an opinionist and you're provocative. I think he's out over his skis and making a fool of himself. Let me move on to this, Steve. I think this weekend in terms of football could be pretty chaotic with a lot of athletes making political statements one way or the other. What do you think?
Oh, here's my belief. The fear of being labeled MAGA, which to me is not a pejorative, I think it's actually a very, very justifiable feeling that, hey, because I'm America first, and I want America to be great again, just like everybody else. That's not a communist. But this whole staining or putting a scarlet letter on anyone that has pro-Republican or pro-conservative feelings, regardless of who is the individual that right now signifies it or symbolizes it, and that'd be Donald Trump, I think is slowly coming off. I just find the hypocrisy of the media that is now wagging the finger at Bosa to be incredibly hypocritical. I thought you wanted athletes to be advocates and to speak out and to quote unquote, use your broad platform. Jason, I've told you this before in the past. I think that there was this real subtext to these commercials, whether it's the entertainers or athletes. Rock the vote. Go out and vote. You know, leagues put out the message, networks put out the message. But I always thought it was very dishonest what they were doing because it should have had a parentheses, vote, parentheses, for the Democrats. So now we get one athlete who we know is conservative just on his leanings and the stuff that he's put out in the past. He makes a simple 2-minute gesture for the wrong guy. Because if that was a defensive end for Kamala, everyone would praise him. He'd be everyone's favorite. But since it's not a part of the approved message of the general mainstream media, he's trying to be, now they're trying to demonize him and his followers. But I will say this, though, Jason, I do wish Bosa, when he got up to the podium, would have actually taken 1 minute out to say, I'm a proud American. I'm going to vote in my interest because I love this country. I don't like what's going on. That's why I did it. Do you have a problem with that? And I would have loved to have seen the reaction of that room.
The false equivalence with Colin Kaepernick is just mind-blowing to me. Kaepernick brought the national anthem into it. Nick Bosa's brought nothing into it other than a hat for 2 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, here's the interesting thing. Is there a double standard? To a certain degree, yeah. The better players that are all pro and headed to the Hall of Fame, they probably get away with more stuff than the mediocre guy that gets benched. I mean, honestly, Joey, look, the Bosa family has certain leanings. Guess what? They are allowed to. We either believe in the First Amendment and athletes using their platform, or we do not. The other thing that's really interesting is this whole notion that Kaepernick somehow was blackballed. The guy literally didn't want to play football. Every single attempt he said to make the league was a PR stunt, and he was not that good. And the other issue is, didn't the NFL put slogans like end racism, and now they play the black national anthem before certain games? This whole notion that somehow that whole messaging has been silenced is unequivocally untrue and false.
TJ, you got any thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I just think I was going to bring up exactly what Steve did. He had his MAGA hat on while it said end racism behind him. So let's not pretend the NFL is not making political statements. They most certainly are. I think Jim Trotter has realized that we are in a post-shame world for MAGA people. And this is their Hail Mary to bring it back. And he's trying to use the NFL as a cudgel to do that. Because remember, Drew Brees wasn't allowed to say, hey, my grandfather was in the military and I don't think you should kneel for the anthem. Everybody in the NFL, it became, you weren't allowed to talk about it. And Drew Brees, who was one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL at the time, even he could go down for that. And so he's trying to see, he's going back to the well to see if the NFL will use Nick Bosa, see if he can use the NFL as a cudgel against MAGA 1 week before election time.
And I think it speaks to their desperation. I mean, I don't think they have anything left other. I really believe the Democrat Party is in complete collapse, and that collapse is all hinged on, well, we got to still be able to call them racist. And if 30% or 28% or 22% of black people vote for Trump, that's off the table.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're going to see, because a lot of this is exit polling. So whenever they tell us, hey, 20% of black people voted for Trump, it's all exit polling. It's all guesswork anyway. It's a small sample. A lot of people don't answer that. I've never left a poll and somebody said, hey, who'd you vote for? Okay, 34-year-old white guy, you voted for Trump. And so I do think it's a lot of guesswork. They're going to be able to maintain that for a long time unless black people come out in mass and create the opposite idea.
Butter, should I let you out of the box, or you're not in the box? You got anything you want to say here? Steve, I think we're going, well, let's see if Butter says something stupid here, then I make it.
I speak on all white guys 5'9" and under when I say that I just think what's happening here is what's happened in journalism, what's happened with academia, professors, the industry, the culture has left these people behind. It sounds desperate to me. The same way we view professors, that's happening in journalism and with these reporters like this. I think it's a similar position that they're in.
Not bad, Butter. Steve, you got a final thought?
Yeah, Jason, in terms of that beta network convention, I was kind of just looking at some of the clips that you're playing. Oh, I'm sorry, BET. Shout out to Donnie Simpson and Video Vibration. But anyway, didn't that remind you fellas of like an Amway convention or a Tupperware party where they try to it's like the last ditch effort of a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme to sell people on this whole thing? I just found it amazing that the top 1%ers who make a very good living are trying to sell everybody on this product or this brand. And here, instead of Amway or makeup, it's a political affiliation or an ideology. And it's interesting, Jason. I sent you something through the Twitter DM. I've been watching some videos where these reporters, I think it was a guy by the name of Elad, does a really good job. He goes to various political conventions and parties and gatherings. And it's funny, for a Nazi convention, Trump really brings out a wide variety of people. It's not just a bunch of old white guys and a bunch of old ladies who are Caucasian. There's a lot of Asians. There are blacks. There are Hispanics, Latinos. By the way, a lot of Puerto Ricans. But that's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of that last Tupperware party you have before you cash out your stakes.
Steve's in agree with me. That's a good analogy. Thank you, Steve. We'll see you tomorrow. We're going to bring Delano Squires in, and we'll get to the bottom of BET's Beta Male Summit next. The Buffaloes are 6-2, and all my enemies are gathering up and laughing at me. And Whitlock, when you gonna give Dion his flowers? Great friend and someone I respect a great deal. Joel Klatt, the Fox Sports college football, the voice of college football for Fox Sports, former Buffalo quarterback. Been on this show. He's a big Dion Buffalo supporter. Joe Klatt tweeted out Saturday or Sunday, Colorado was the worst team in the P5 2 years ago. Deion Sanders came to Boulder as their head coach, and now they're 6-2, headed to a bowl game. 4-1 in the Big 12 with an outside shot at the Big 12 title game. Where you at, haters? That's Joe Klatt. Before I respond, let me walk you through the rest of Colorado's schedule. At Texas Tech, hosting Utah, at Kansas, and Oklahoma State. Kansas is having a terrible year. I still like Lance Leopold, the coach. That makes them dangerous. Texas Tech, they can score. We'll see what happens there. Utah's lost its quarterback. Oklahoma State's having a really bad year. Mike Gundy can coach. All right, welcome back. Let's roll out to Washington, D.C. and bring in Professor D, Delano Squires, who last night sat through the Beta Male Summit on BET. Delano, the floor is yours. What did I miss? I had you watch it. I had Jack watch it because I just didn't want to put, Shemeka watched it. I didn't want to put myself through it. What did I miss?
Oh, Jason, what you missed was a despicable display of abdication of responsibility on behalf, by the men that Democrats, the only types of black men that Democrats allow, which are obedient allies. This basically was a campaign event for the Harris-Walz campaign. Everybody there was fully in lockstep. There were no dissenting voices. Every topic, even however far away you think it had to do with President Trump, with Donald Trump, ended up coming back to Donald Trump, including protecting black communities, which ended up on a conversation about police immunity in Charlottesville. And then they talked about sexism, and you know, they had Justin Pearson, remember our favorite MLK impersonator from Nashville. He was talking about patriarchy and the intersectional challenges that black women face, and how, you know, all of us, we were raised by our mama and our grandmama. We need to stand up for them. And then they ended the night in terms of topics on abortion, what they call reproductive rights. And they did a man on the street interview. And it took everything in me to stop from throwing my phone, because if they talked to 6 guys, 5 of them said, yeah, I'm for reproductive, you know, rights, reproductive justice, whatever euphemisms they used. And it struck me, I'm old enough to have seen black men go from calling ourselves kings to arguing that we need to destroy our heirs, all because the women who rule over us and the party that we vote for says that's what it means to be a real man. And that's how they ended the night, where these guys, when they came back to the event space, and one of the guy who was doing the interview on the street, he said, how many of us know that black women are going to save the planet? And then they went on to talk about why standing up for our mothers and our sisters means voting for quote unquote reproductive rights. And that's when I realized, like, these guys are hopeless. And I pray that this is not an accurate representation of our community. I'm afraid that it's more accurate than most people want to acknowledge and admit, based on the fact that the vast majority of black men are going to vote for Kamala Harris. But it was a sad display by BET. I'm glad I watched it. Part of this, you know, there's a masochistic streak in me, so I said, you know, let me torture myself a little bit on a Tuesday night. But this really was a sad display of how far black masculinity has fallen over the course of the last few decades.
And so I know that sometimes you'll go off into the weeds over social media and figure out what was kind of going on behind the scenes. Do you know if there's been any pushback, or was there any conversation about having a dissenting opinion on the show? Did they even attempt to find someone to argue the other side of this? And were there any people watching that were complaining, like, could we have a little diversity here?
I saw a few people that I follow online on Twitter, you know, pointing out the fact that there were no dissenting voices, right? And no one on the center right. I also spoke to someone who sort of in the mix on the left, who said that he advised them not to have this, because this event would only serve as basically doubling down on what Barack Obama was doing a few weeks ago, which is trying to scold and lecture black men as to why they need to support Kamala Harris, right? So this wasn't a true event about, you know, voting and civic participation and talking about the issues. This was a campaign event held by Harris surrogates. And at one point, Shemeka and I were, you know, we were interacting online on X. And I said, if they really wanted to have a real event, they would have gotten Ed Gordon or Tavis Smiley or somebody who could manage an event where you have multiple perspectives, even if you know they're on the left, right? These are some people, these are journalists who can at least give the appearance of objectivity. But as is often the case, when it comes to talking to the black community, they get celebrities and comedians and entertainers and semi-literate lawyers and athletes and other people who really don't speak for the black community because they're so far removed from our everyday concerns.
you make an excellent point about D.L. Hughley was the host. And D.L. Hughley is a comedian. And I used to like D.L. Hughley's comedy. I'm not going to denigrate him there. But he's not Jon Stewart. He's not. I'm not sure. I'd be shocked if DL can name all 50 states, couldn't identify them on a map. I'm not sure if he's really that versed in the issues. He is versed in talking points, and he is, was Roland Martin any part of this? Because that's the. Was he involved in this? Because it seems like he keeps getting left out of a lot of these events. Has he made such a laughing stock of himself that they don't even roll him out for these type of events?
I'm not sure the cause. I didn't see Roland Martin, and I'm assuming if he was there, they would have had the camera on him. I saw, in terms of the people on the stage, obviously D.L. Hughley, Benjamin Crump, Michael Ealy. I saw in the audience Keith Boykin. I saw the guy from the Shade Room who interviewed the vice president a few weeks ago. So I saw a few celebrities. Mark Morial was in the audience from, the head of the National Urban League. So they had some, luminaries, so to speak, in the audience. I didn't see Roland Martin, and I'm assuming if he was there, he would have not only had the camera on him, but he would have spoken and, done what it is that he does. But yeah, it really was a sad display. I mean, they talked about, they linked LGBT rights to the civil rights struggle. This is what Benjamin Crump said. He said, oh, if they can discriminate against one group of people, they can discriminate against us. Again, they spent a lot of time on abortion. They talked about the impact of sexism. And again, Justin Pearson talked about the patriarchy. I personally don't trust any man who uses the term patriarchy in a pejorative sense. I don't trust any guy like that. Now, he said, one example of patriarchy is when he goes to visit places, black churches, and people greet him and not his fiance. And the first thing I thought was, oh, he's engaged to a woman? And then the second thing I said, okay, let me see what she looked like. And she actually is a black woman, so I mean, I guess that's to his credit. But these are the types of guys that they had on there. And you mentioned D.L. Hughley, and Jason, you know me, we've been rocking together for 3 years. I try not to get personal with people. But D.L. Hughley is a man who said that his daughter came to him and told him that someone he knows sexually assaulted her. And he says, these are his words that he's admitted to in public, that he didn't believe her and he didn't stand up for her. That is not the right man to be telling me that I need to be protecting women by voting for Kamala Harris. I'm sorry. You may want to give that message. He can't give that to me. And this is the problem that I have with politics in general and politics in the black community specifically, is that we see 90% loyalty to the Democratic Party as more of a sign of cultural cohesion than we see loyalty to one another in our own homes. That is the problem. The problem is that you couldn't get one of these Negroes out to a summit about rebuilding the black family today. But they can do it for an East Indian Jamaican woman, right, in order to put her in the White House. And they think that she's going to advocate for them. That's my biggest frustration. And this is not, that's not just D.L. Hughley, it's all of them. This is how they all think. They have been programmed. This is the NPC chip that they get when they go off to college. Whatever everybody is saying, that's what they say. Oh, transracial human rights. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Love is love. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Abort your children into oblivion. Say you want generational wealth while destroying the generations that would inherit it. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I don't understand it, Jason, but this is where we are today as a community. And the sad fact that even in an event talking about black men, these guys understood the assignment, as the young kids say, where every time they got an opportunity, they said, black women lead, black women lead, black women are gonna save the world, the planet. It went from saving democracy to saving the country. Now they're saving the planet. Next year it's gonna be saving the galaxy. This is how down bad the sort of boule Afrostocracy Negro is in American society today. Roland Martin can say, vote like a black woman. None of these guys will wear a shirt that said, lead like a black man.
What do you think of my narrative that this was just another desperate attempt because the Democrat Party is in total free fall. They're not concerned about winning this election. I think they've conceded the election. They just want to hold on to the perception that they lost the election because America is racist, and they need 90% of the black vote to hold on to that perception.
Well, I definitely think they're desperate. I mean, I've seen polls that said 72% of black men will vote for Kamala Harris, which is down from, I think, 80+% for Joe Biden. So I definitely think that they're desperate. I don't think that they've conceded the election to this point. Do I think that they're trying to whip guys back in line? Absolutely. And I've been saying this for months. If Donald Trump wins the election, and if he wins Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, in any part because black men in Atlanta, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Milwaukee broke for him, black men better be ready to get the 53% treatment, which is what white women got in 2016 when all the op-eds post-election were 53% of white women voted for Donald Trump. They listened to their husbands and, so black men are going to get that type of treatment. I do think a lot of it is about keeping guys in line, and many of these guys are so obedient that they'll do whatever they're told, right? They'll beat their chest and talk about how much man they are, but at the end of the day, all of them are answering to some woman, even the ones who don't even like women. So I do see it as a sign of desperation. And I'll say this, because Jason, I'm sure you've seen this commercial that the Harris campaign put out where, the two white women are at the voting booth and the voice over, which I think is Julia Roberts, is saying, this is the one place where women can still choose and, you don't have to tell your husband, that type of thing. It struck me, one, I think this shows how much politics have become an idol in our country, where, again, we think unity with a political party and a woman listening to know-nothing celebrities and corrupt politicians is more important than unity in the home, where husband and wife are the only human relationship where two are told to become one. The other thing that struck me is that Democrats resent the notion that particularly white women would listen to their husbands. I'm struck because they don't even play those commercials in our community because they know that black men know their place. Black women are the CEOs, and black men on the left are the executive assistants. So there's no need to tell black women, oh, you don't have to tell your husband. In fact, the message is reversed. They tell black men, you should follow your women. And this is a direct result of the destruction of the traditional family structure in our community. The roles are reversed. Neither party is looking to one another and saying we need to be a unit, in unity. It's every man out for themselves. And as I said, and I've said before, this happened because at a certain point, black women had white liberals to their left and black men to their right. And they had divorce and marriage in either hand. And they said, we're gonna get rid of y'all and we're gonna tie ourselves to them. And that union between black feminists and white liberals has been the most significant interracial marriage in this country's history. It's not Loving versus Virginia. It's that union which has been powering the Democratic Party for the better part of 60 years.
Great stuff, Delano. Thank you so
Jason.
much. That was awesome. You guys don't go anywhere. I got your daily dose of Caitlin Clark. X.
Months. How do you listen to these stories and not feel pain and not want to help? You know what I mean? It's like wearing a hoodie and putting your hands at 10 and 2. Oh God, I better look out because I'm wearing Nike gear. Like what? What are we talking about? And so you can't relate to that if you're white, but you can listen. And you can try to help, because this is not okay. It's just not.
It's not.
And,
because I wouldn't know how to live if he wouldn't have made it out. And so thank you for everybody that reached out to me. And like, I know it's getting better, but it's not better yet, and better for everybody.
We give guys these big contracts because they want to be able to lead 70 men, coaches, equipment staff, and managers to the #1 goal, and that's to win a championship. And for us to be moving back and not forward in 21st century, like I said, man, National Football League, this hurts me. The clock is ticking, man. I'm sorry.
All right, welcome back. Time for your daily dose of Caitlin Clark. The Fever are looking for a new coach, and a lot of people have zeroed in on Stephanie White, who was the head coach of the Connecticut Sun. She was the former head coach at Vanderbilt University. She's a former coach of the Indiana Fever, a former player for the Indiana Fever. She played at Indiana University, and now people have unearthed old video of her this season. Like, she's been angling for this job to coach Caitlin Clark from the get-go. And so here's Stephanie White. Remember early in the season when everybody's taking a dump on Caitlin Clark, Stephanie White, while coach of the Connecticut Sun, was one of the people actually defending Caitlin Clark. Play the clip.
When I'm, looking at all these things that people are talking about with Caitlin Clark, it's like, guys, chill out. Like, she's gonna be fine. Like, it's 2 games in. Are you kidding me? She's a student of the game. She got better every year. You're not going to just absorb all of the new information that's coming at you in 2 games, in 2 weeks. It takes time. And she will. I have no doubt about it. She's a student of the game. She continues to get better. And these are also points that coaches then address. Hey, let's continue to work on this. But it's really hard to work on some of those things in season. So this might be an off-season thing, right? Let's continue to play to our strengths. Let's find different ways to get the ball to our players. And then when we get time in the off-season, then we'll work on that next step or that next level.
So that's Stephanie White, and hats off to her. Back then, that was water in the desert because everybody else was dumping on Caitlin Clark, and Gino Auriemma, and everybody was like, oh, this is exactly what was going to happen. Her delusional fans, blah, blah, blah. Stephanie White out there championing Caitlin Clark early on. And here's Caitlin Clark talking about Stephanie White leading into the season.
But I noticed that the first person that you greeted from the Connecticut team was actually head coach Stephanie White. What was that like to just be able to catch up with her in your pro debut?
Yeah, she's obviously called a lot of my games all throughout college, and I just think she has a really great basketball mind. I think she's done a great job calling college games. It's been great to see her on NBA games. I think what she's done is she's obviously, she's been a trailblazer, honestly. I think she's always been somebody that's been supportive of my game, and it's been fun to talk to her at shoot-arounds throughout my college career, and always been really supportive. And so I think the biggest thing is just it's fun to go against her now for my first time after her calling a lot of my games. Now I get to play against her, so I think that's going to be a lot of fun for the both of us.
So there you have it. They're familiar with each other from Stephanie White calling games, college basketball games. You gotta remember the WNBA season operates on a different schedule than college basketball. So Stephanie White gets to know Caitlin Clark a little bit, gets to cover. I'm sure she's an authentic fan. But there's a reason why I'm lukewarm on this dream pairing of Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark. And I just gotta be completely transparent here. This will probably make me sound unfair. Probably some people will call me homophobic or whatever, but Stephanie White joined the alphabet team after a marriage and 3 kids. She's now allegedly dating Lisa Salters, who works for ESPN. And I can't remember, I've been trying to figure this out for the past day and a half. Lisa Salters was dating some high-profile journalist at some point. I'm like, man, Lisa Salters, this cougar goes, every high-profile lesbian in the world, she's on DM with him or whatever. She's involved. Anyway, allegedly, according to the internet, they live here in Nashville with me. I'm sorry for saying this. Well, I'm not sorry for saying it because it's what I think, and I need to quit apologizing for what I think. Has a hostile environment towards heterosexual women. And that's been made crystal clear, and everybody knows it. This is no secret. Heterosexual players have complained about it, and Caitlin Clark is heterosexual for now. At one point, Stephanie White was heterosexual. And I just, if I'm the Indiana Fever, I'm doing everything I can to recreate the environment they had at Iowa. And Lisa Bluter has a husband who was the former head coach at Iowa, just retired. The woman that replaced her, I believe her name is Jan Jansen or something like that, Caitlin Clark, she's now the head coach at Iowa. She has a husband. And Caitlin Clark and her very, very close. I think if you're trying to put Caitlin Clark in the best environment, she needs a heterosexual female coach. And that's not my homophobia. That's not me trying to be unfair to Stephanie White or whatever. It's a reflection of the reality of that league. Caitlin Clark and the Fever went through this season with Nylisa Smith dating Dejanay Carrington from an opposing team. Why can't I think of? They were just in the. Is Dejanay? Is she with the Connecticut Sun, or she's with one of the teams that was just in the finals, not the New York Liberty. Whoever the New York Liberty just played. But anyway, she's Nylisa Smith and Dejanay Carrington, and Nylisa Smith could not play in games at a high level when Dejanay Carrington was on the court. These complicated and intricate, complex relationships, sexual relationships inside the WNBA, it plays a role. I'm on the record. Like, I love the Erica Wheeler girl that's on the Indiana Fever team. She seems to be a lesbian. I got no problem with it. But from a leadership and a tone perspective for the Indiana Fever, I think they need a heterosexual coach. They need a coach who's right in line with what has made Caitlin Clark successful in the past, what Caitlin Clark has going on in her life. You start, guys, we all sit here and will say that, hey, men have no sexual discipline. And we pretend like women do. And they don't. There's a very, very high-profile coach, maybe the highest profile coach in women's basketball. Go read the stories about her and former players on her team that she's been connected to. The underbelly and the stuff that's never discussed about women's basketball and women's sports in general, because no one wants to have those conversations. Now, we'll have a conversation about a Larry Nassar and what goes on with gymnasts. We love to talk about that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about it, and I'm not saying that the sexual impropriety that goes on in women's athletics, man to woman, I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about it. We should. It's not right. But so is the same thing as it relates to women and women in sports. There's a lot of that never gets addressed, never gets talked about. And I'm sure Stephanie White will hear this, I would never, and how dare Whitlock even speculate about that? You know why I would speculate about it? Because if I were a male coach coaching female athletes, I would someone in their right mind be like, man, y'all better keep an eye on Whitlock. That dude has very little sexual discipline. That's men in general. I don't really believe in men coaching women for that very reason. And I don't really believe in alternative lifestyle women having unchecked power, because again, go look at the culture and environment in the WNBA. Hostile to heterosexual women. There's a little traveling sex cult that everybody knows goes on. It's a little traveling sex circus at these arenas. And the reason why people hate Caitlin Clark's fan is because they've invaded the lesbian gay pride circus that was going on in the WNBA, and they're not comfortable with it. Not denigrating Stephanie White as a coach. She's done a great job from all the reports. I haven't followed her work closely. She does a decent job as a broadcaster of women's college basketball. I've heard her do that. But for Caitlin Clark, now again, if the best player was DeWanna Bronner, I think she plays for the Connecticut Sun, and she's married or engaged to one of her teammates. Yeah, Stephanie White, perfect coach for that. Maybe Alyssa Thomas, I think is her name. She's a great player. Stephanie White, perfect coach for that. That's what they got going on that team. Players are marrying each other, and it's an LGBTQ hyper environment. Stephanie White fits right in. Caitlin Clark, not so much. Find you a coach that likes men, a female coach that go get you a Kim Mulkey. Go somebody, some woman that has a husband, likes men, has no interest in the players, will create an environment where there's no pressure, no hostility towards heterosexual players. That's what Caitlin Clark deserves. That's what would bring out the best in Caitlin Clark. That's what was going on at Iowa, and why this woman took a team with not overwhelming talent to back-to-back NCAA title games. The Fever should try to duplicate that, not try to have some reunion with some beloved former player and coach, Stephanie White. Those are my thoughts. You'll hear them no place else because everyone else will run from that. And I'll probably get in trouble or people get mad. This is why we got to destroy Whitlock. He keeps talking about things that are not supposed to be talked about. That's what we do here. So that's your daily dose of Caitlin Clark for today. We're going to have some Tennessee Harmony here next. We're going to talk about that commercial that Delano referenced earlier. Kamala Harris and the commercial telling women, hey, lie to your husband. Hey, but remember, you don't have to abandon your faith and your religious values to support me, but go ahead and lie to your husband. We'll talk about that next with Anthony, Virgil, Kevin, and TJ Moe. I don't want to say next yet because I do want to say, don't go anywhere because you're going to love this commercial we play next. If you think Oliver Anthony can sing, if you think Oliver Anthony wrote a great song about Richmond north of Richland or whatever it's called, wait till you hear NFL Damn Shame next.
I've been selling my stuff, hustling eBay, PlayStation car parts for little or no pay, so I can sit out here and watch the Titans play. Stumble on home and rub my blue balls away. It's a damn shame what the NFL has turned to for fans like me and fans like you. Wish I could just wake up and Patriots red, white, and blue, but I can't. This football nightmare's true. Living in a Madden world with Lombardi sold. These cowards bound to feminists, Lord knows they all just want to wear And they don't think we know that they drink Bud Light too. Cause these players don't hit, might as well have limp wrists. Cause of these cowards bowing down to feminists. I wish sports media would look out for fans and not just Taylor Swift promoting her brand. Lord, we out in the parking lot, tailgating, grilling meat, and the obese just can't wait to eat. Well, God, if you're a referee and blind as a bat, Roger Goodell should grow a pair and give you the axe. We had Derrick Henry, we played ground and pound, but the idiot Titans chased our king out of town. Lord, it's a damn shame what the NFL has turned to for fans like me and fans like you. Wish I could just wake up in Patriots red, white, and blue, but I can't. This football nightmare's true. Living in a Madden world with Lombardi's soul. These cowards bound to feminists, Lord knows they all just want to wear pantyhose and control what you think, want to vex you and mask you. And they don't think we know that they drink Bud Light too. Cause these players don't hit, might as well have limp wrists. Cause of these cowards bowing down to feminists. I've been selling my stuff, hustling eBay, PlayStation car parts for little or no pay.
All right, welcome back. Time for a little Tennessee harmony. Anthony, Virgil, Kevin, TJ. We got a full house in here. Anthony, if you could start us out with a prayer.
Father God, we're thankful for your word on today. Thankful for just Jesus the Christ, him dying on the cross for our sins. Father, help us to continue to put our faith in him. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Gentlemen, we're going to start with the commercial. Julia Roberts is in the commercial. Delano has referenced it already. But this is Kamala Harris's campaign advising women to lie to their husbands about who they're voting for. So I can't wait to hear the professional take from you guys. Let's play the commercial.
Your turn, honey.
In the one place in America where women still have a right to choose, you can vote any way you want. And no one will ever know.
Did you make the right choice?
Sure did, honey.
Remember, what happens in the booth stays in the booth. Vote Harris Walls. Vote Common Good is responsible for the contents of this ad.
Anthony, is that commercial biblically sound?
Not at all. Not at all. I don't expect anything from a party or a platform that attempts to redefine what man and woman is, redefine what marriage is. So if they're going to redefine that, then they're also going to redefine how you should function in marriage. So that if that means lying to your spouse about whatever you do, including voting, that's obviously what it is. And all of that goes antithetical to what the word says about it. It reminds me of, in Exodus chapter 30, we talked about it in our prayer call, how God says, I'm sitting before you now, life and death, choose life. Like we do have the choice. The problem is the choices that we're making. That commercial just turned me.
Virgil, this is, to me, all part of the slippery slope that, they have redefined marriage. Now, 2 men, 2 women can get married.
Yeah.
And so now we have a commercial saying, hey, guys, you're not actually one, go ahead and lie to him. You have freedom here. There's no God in this voting booth. It's just you and the ballot. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, at the end of the day, the ballot is God, right? You're one-on-one with the one who made you, right? And so you're bowing down to God, which is government, and the government is telling you how you should cast your vote. One of the things that I did, Jason, when I watched this clip that we got sent of this commercial, I wanted to identify where it was coming from. And I identified, at the end of the commercial, they mentioned vote common good. So I looked it up. The thing that infuriates me like nothing else, and you saw it the last time I was on, was when pastors, those who claim to carry the name of Christ and God into the public square, do things that are antithetical to a biblical worldview. This is made by a man named Doug Pagitt, who is the executive director of Vote Common Good, and their whole agenda is to move Christians away from biblical thinking, biblical worldview, to something different. Anthony mentioned it in his segment where he talked about the redefining of marriage. It's a redefinition of how we interact with God, of how we see the world, of how we think about marriage. And so when you see pastors and those who claim to be leaders of the church in the public square advocating for what is opposite of biblical worldview, we have to be very emphatic about our absolute rejection of their ideology. It's very important.
TJ, the video takes me to, this is why I really am. I'm probably against suffrage and women voting. And because what I'm pro is families voting. There should be one vote per married man and woman. That man and woman get to have a debate inside their house. They get to decide how they're going to use their one vote. And so I see suffrage, just that whole movement, women's right to, that's really maybe the slippery slope that started dividing man and woman. Am I stupid, crazy for thinking that?
No, I don't think you're stupid or crazy for thinking that. Although, I'll just tell you, this commercial is so instructive of how Democrats view marriage, and that it's just sort of these women come into a prison and you're never on the same team, you don't share values. It's really 1940. And if you just watch Mad Men, that's how women are treated all the time. That's how Democrats view marriage. And it's just not reality. I don't know anybody with that marriage. As relates to the suffrage thing, my wife has all the same values that I do. In fact, as we've gotten closer and we sit and talk about scripture and our values, she's moved way further to the right, towards me. And that's where the 19th Amendment's a really good thing, right? Because in theory, if marriage is healthy, you're actually pulling women towards you, and you have more people voting in the direction that you want to be voting in the proper Christian way. Single women, I think, do struggle with the voting. I mean, I think in the last election, 68% of single women voted Democrat. I mean, they're off the reservation when by themselves. But I do think, I think all studies demonstrate this. Women move towards their husbands in their voting habits once they get married. And so that's what they're trying to do. I mean, right, the whole thing is what happens in the booth stays in the booth. It's just a what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas thing. It's like you're willing to go throw your marriage, because that's what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas is go have your fun, cheat, wreck your marriage, nobody will ever know, hope it just goes fine. You want to add that to the voting booth? I mean, good luck.
It is classic propaganda. If I were to rate this as a propaganda professor, it gets an A+. I mean, it has every aspect. It's saying you don't have a choice, like so they're throwing the abortion issue in there right away. The only place you still have a choice is the voting booth. And so there's that. Then there's the feminized husband, right? Then there's the, hey, we're on the same team with the eye contact, right? And then there's the obvious choice there between Trump or Kamala, and she fills in the thing. It even the whole illusion of voting, like this is the way voting works. Like you're gonna fill it in like a Scantron sheet, and you're gonna turn it in, and your vote matters. And the last election showed that that's probably not even true, right? And so if you study propaganda, if you look at Edward Bernays, they were able to convince women to start smoking back in the 19-teens. And they did it subtly. And the best propaganda is always subtle. The best scams are always subtle. The way Edward Bernays did it is they had women at the Macy's Day Parade get their picture taken with cigarettes. And the headline across the country was Torches of Freedom. So they were associating this idea of smoking cigarettes will make you freedom, will give you freedom from men. And his uncle was Freud. And so they also said the cigarette represents a phallic symbol, so women will now have their own penis, right? So it's like, and then the number of women went from like 2% smoking to like 50%. And it changed the culture. And that's what this is trying to do as well. You ever watch that show, American Greed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen.
With Stacy Keach. It's a great show. And the reasons like you admire the con artists.
Yep.
You're like, how did you pull that off? Like, what made you think that you could do that? And you had the guts to pull off this Ponzi scheme, you know, and whatever it may be. And so the same thing here is, this is just pulling off a massive scam. I don't know men who behave this way or even look that way. And I don't know many women that will go there and try to subvert their family or subvert their husband's will to do that. But they're broadcasting this. I mean, I haven't seen this commercial except for when you sent it to me. But it's just total subversion, and it's just total propaganda.
I love your analogy of it to how cigarettes were promoted to us in terms of they made you think this was the cool, rebellious, freeing. This is what happiness is, smoking a cigarette and killing yourself.
And it's as simple as that. You get freedom by lighting up a cigarette. You get freedom by going in that vote and going against what your husband wishes.
Burning down your marriage.
Yeah, right.
The whole piece about the what you do in the voting booth, what happens here, isn't promoted. To me, I saw that as what he doesn't know or what they don't know won't hurt them. And that's one of the biggest lies of the enemy. And when we look at what that has done throughout our society, what we don't know has absolutely hurt us. We don't have a connection with God. We don't know him. It hurts us. We don't know what our spouse is doing. It hurts us. We don't know what our kids are viewing. It hurts them. We don't know what's on the internet, what they have access to, what books are in the library, what the teachers are teaching in the classroom. We don't know because we're not plugged in, and absolutely it hurts. So in a situation like that, as TJ's talking about, you have a discussion about, what we're thinking about policy, because how we vote is going to impact the nation and society in the next generation. And then we're going to go in the voting booth and secretly and covertly and deceptively go in an opposite way. That speaks to what that marriage is functioning like, which they're saying, and I love the point that you made, TJ, marriage is just basically an arrangement, or it is when you are married, you step back into the 1930s and you're just, you just kind of, subverted in that situation. So it was it's a bad commercial, but I can see what you're saying, Kevin. It's going to accomplish what they desire for it to accomplish.
Don't you guys think they're trying to take back the narrative here a little bit? Because what they're really saying is the rebellious thing to do would be, the rebellious thing to do is to vote for Donald Trump, because women have hated Trump. And so everybody has been, for 8 years, women have been, look, get away from me, you're too bombastic, I can't handle Donald Trump. And women are rebelling by voting for Donald Trump. And they're trying to act like it's the opposite.
Virgil, Delano was on earlier and referenced this commercial organically and made the point that, look, this commercial is targeted at white women and white families because it's unnecessary to target it at black women and black families, because men already know and women already know that they're the CEOs in black families. And the man, if they did one of these commercials, they'd actually have the man voting in secret. That it was a pretty powerful and provocative book, because I know from 2020, I know some dudes that secretly voted for Trump, didn't want to deal with the hassle of telling their wives, so they lied to their wives about what they were doing Your thoughts on that?
No, I think he's spot on, and you see it in a couple of ways here in where I am in Georgia. It presents itself with pastors who are out promoting the feminist agenda from the pulpit with the promotion of, the LGBTQ issues or the promotion of abortion on demand, especially in Black communities, where in most of these churches, there's only a pastor, he's feminized or is promoting feminism, and there are very few men. So the men aren't really there. There's no need to make a push to tell men to do anything, because they're either not existent, or the ones that are promoted are either feminized or actually LGBTQ themselves. So I think Delano is spot on as it relates to that particular issue. On the flip side, here's the other thing I'm seeing. As I go out and talk to people, I'm watching. I wore this past weekend. I wore my MAGA hat and was just kind of out and about. I'm watching brothers kind of come up and kind of quietly, hey, I like that hat. I like that. Or giving you the thumbs up. And I'm like, bro, be a grown man. Like, if you like Trump, be proud about it. The left that has no problem being bold about their feminized worldview. I don't know why we should be silent about a patriarchal worldview. But you're still seeing that, and again, it amplifies the point that Delano was making, which is in Black culture, men are so quiet, so they're so used to the matriarchy, they're saying little to nothing, recognizing that the only voices that get lifted in this space are either feminized ones or men who are acting like women.
Virgil, I want your thoughts on. I'm telling you, I can say this because I'm not married, and I really I'm anti-suffrage. I see that whole movement as the beginning of the destruction of family, and again, the Bible says these people are made into one, man and woman. Why would you have two votes on that? Am I wrong for thinking that?
We have the 19th Amendment. It's in place, and it gives women the right to vote. I began, as we're looking back at history and understanding a lot of revisionist history has taken place, I think it's been important to go back and see what women were saying about suffrage at the time. I've begun reading anti-suffragettes, the women themselves who were saying this is not something that we need to promote. And some of the things that they were saying, there was a lady by the name of Molly Sewell. She said this, quote, "To put the ballot into the hands of women would be to degrade it, to cheapen it, and to weaken the influence of the home," end quote. Now, again, what these women aren't saying are women are worthless, women are of no value, they're not equal to men. That's not what they're saying. The arguments that the anti-suffragettes were making was the same one that you're asking the question about right now, Jason, which is, won't this destroy the home? Won't this separate man and woman from one another? Let me give you one more. And again, this is an anti-suffragette in the late 1800s, early 1900s. She said this was Madeline Dahlgren, Dahlgren. She said this, quote, "The sacred duties of wife and mother are paramount. If women were allowed to vote, they would neglect their duties and damage society," end quote. And again, these aren't women who are saying women are less than women. No, what these women are saying is there's a proper role for women in society to have a healthy society. And as a result of that, there's no need for the woman to get out in front of her man and make policy and politics and voting paramount. I'm not saying get rid of the 19th Amendment. I'm not saying women shouldn't vote. I do think it is of value to go back and look at what these women said in light of what we're dealing with today and see if some of them weren't prophetic in what they actually stated back then, and we're watching it play out in our culture right now.
Just for Anthony, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to pick up on what Virgil was saying. I think, too, it's not just them having the right to vote, but it's also what that has meant for them. Like, instead of just giving the right to vote, it is, you don't need a man, the government will be your man. Mm-hmm. Right. It has also been the degrading of that position of wife and mother. Man, one of the best things a woman can be in God's creation is a wife and mother. That is such a valuable role in God's creation. And again, we talk about this from a political dynamic, but when we look at what God has done in his creation with man and woman, husband and wife, in extending his rule in his creation, he's got the family right at the forefront. So she already has a very high duty, but what, again, in addition to giving the right to vote, it has been the replacing of the man. You don't need a man. We'll give you the financial support. We'll give you all the aid you need. You don't need that man. So then we're kicking him to the curb and trying to elevate the government to his place.
I think it just tips things completely out of balance. And what I mean by that is a woman carries a baby in her womb for 9 months. Child depends on the woman for food from her tit. A child has, a developing child has such an affinity and a dependence on the mother. She's already in a lead position. She gets to develop the child. She has a special connection with the child. And now we're going to put her on steroids and give her the right to vote. Things are out of balance. That's why we're all catering to women. They are the most, we've given them, God already made them powerful just with the role of carrying a child, nurturing and developing a child. We've now put them on steroids and made them more powerful than us, and we're wondering why the whole country is kowtowing and pandering and catering to them instead of us. It's insanity.
Jason,
Kevin, I'll give you a final thought. Go ahead, Virgil. I'll give Kevin a final thought.
I'll briefly say this and turn it back. If you'll read some of the anti-suffragettes, they were making the same arguments that you're making right now. Their whole framework was, we have the most powerful role in society. Why would we give that up for the purpose of being outside the home, doing things that God really did not give us the strength and ability and power to do, which is focusing on public policy. That's the heavy lift of a man. I'm going to link up with my husband and vote with him. And again, I'm not saying, repeal the 19th Amendment. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just looking at these women in their own words and how interesting what they're saying is in light of where our culture is and in light of the very commercial that you showed us at the beginning of this segment.
It's why it's important to understand true history. What Virgil's reading here is the way it was. People were anti-women voting. And there was a good reason for it. It's logical. And you're bringing the same point up now. What that commercial does, it infers that there's still a revolution, that we're still not free, and that we still got to fight for this independence from men, from men being husband and Trump in this case, right? So that's what this does. And like I said, it's a propaganda piece. It's anti-man and it's anti-truth, I would say.
Gentlemen, great job. Thank you so much. We'll get to Shemeka, find out what the chat had to say about today's show next. Shannon Sharpe interviewed Kamala Harris yesterday, and it was a remarkable interview in terms of secondhand embarrassment for Shannon Sharpe. Like, really? Really? First of all, you gonna show up in that super tight suit, in that super tight suit to interview the Vice President of the United States, all the way down. It was like he was wearing a onesie, basically. The man showed up to interview Kamala Harris in a onesie. I just want you to understand the mentality of men and how we've been programmed into our own femininity. Just think this through. Shannon Sharpe's like, yeah, we're gonna interview the president, the vice president. She wanna be president today. what can I put on to show off my body to this woman? I just want you to think, who has that mentality? If they go back to their factory settings, if their mindset is proper, who shows up to a meeting, a man and a woman, which one of them should be most concerned about showing off their body? All right, welcome back. Before we get to the chat, Shemeka, I heard you watched the Beta Male Summit last night on BET. What'd you think?
So, Jason, before I get to that, I want to say you introduced me wrong. Joe Biden said that Trump supporters are garbage. So to spice mine up a little bit, from now until Tuesday, I'll be going by Shemeka Garbage, or Garbage, however you want to pronounce it, okay? That's my new name.
I read on Twitter that rubbish is actually a little higher class, so maybe Shemeka Rubbish, that's a little higher grade trash.
Rubbish, can we spice it up? Yes.
What do you think of the Beta Male Summit?
Yes, I watched it, and it was exactly what you called it, a Beta Male Summit. If I had to think about sexual desire being created watching it, I would have turned into a desert. Like tumbleweed would have been rumbling through. It was awful, Jason. I think my blood pressure went up a little bit just sitting there watching all of these Black men simp for a woman who chose a white one. It's crazy to me the things that they were saying. And when they got to protecting women and felt like their way of protecting us was making sure they could plant their seed in us and we have the freedom to go and uproot that seed, it was disgusting to me. It was despicable. And I was just disappointed watching the entire thing and knowing when Justin, I think it was, said 80% of us vote this way, I was thinking, that's sad. That's really sad that we have that large amount of Black men who would rather bow down and follow a woman opposed to saying, no, I'm that leader. I can be that leader. Let's, hold off until we can lead. And I'm so sick of hearing your mama did it. Your grandma did it. Where are the fathers? Where are the grandfathers, the uncles, the coaches, the pastors, the mentors? Why aren't they ever given their due appreciation and recognition? I'm sick of it. It's so terrible to watch, Jason. And for someone that has 3 daughters, my outlook for them in choosing or having a spouse is starting to look real grim.
If they have your values, Shemeka, prepare yourself. They'll be marrying white men. I've seen it happen with friends of mine, their daughters, and if they're looking for people with shared values, tough sledding. I'm just keeping it real. What was popping in the chat before I get myself in more trouble? Yeah, I'm hoping somebody had some theories on how we spell D's with an S instead of a Z, but don't force anything. What's popping in the chat?
Well, most people thought it was funny because they did recognize that it was spelled wrong, so they just started to put D-E-E-Z, and they thought it was funny that it had an S on the end, and so did I because, when you said it must have been somebody white, and then Justin to say, oh, I admit I did that, it was even funnier to me. So
it was actually Ren that did, Justin did these, but anyway, Continue.
Yeah, but people were agreeing with you, and they loved Delano. Delano was cooking today. Jason, you came
Yes, he
in
was.
yesterday on fire, and then Delano came and threw some gasoline on that. Y'all have been on fire the last few days, and it's just I'm appreciating it, and so are the people in the chat. The Doran Williams show sent us a super chat, so thank you. Props to Whitlock. He's the only person in media to call Kaepernick's protest a temper tantrum. He protested the 49ers at first, not the police.
Exactly. Next.
Paul S. says, JW, is it cold in the studio, or are you conjuring up a spirit of a Compton Crip?
I'm just doing something a little different. It's not cold in the studio, but for some reason, I just wanted to do something a little different. And I'll probably be doing it all week. I don't know. I just go through these changes, stages, midlife or old man crisis. Next.
Dre Day Solo asks, and someone else did as well, asked me, do you think women should vote? I do on one condition: if they enter the selective service like men, then I can see the equality on the vote. And someone else asked me, what did I think about women voting? I always say I would willingly give up my right to vote for a lot of these other women to lose theirs. And that's how I feel. Of course, I feel like because I'm on this side, I'm voting the right way, but I'd give it up to keep these other women from voting.
That's exactly how I feel in terms of I think only families should vote. And so I'll sacrifice my right to vote. So only families, a married man and woman, should be allowed to vote. That's how I think the country should lean. Next.
Also, Jason, I wanted to let you know, people in the chat loved the song. So I forgot to tell you that. They thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll play it again
was
tomorrow.
great.
Song is awesome.
And so last comment, RT the brand said, this is just my take. Not saying it's true, just an observation. I see a lot of guys smoking cigars, and this came from the Tennessee Harmony chat.
Conversation.
He just said a cigarette represented a male phallus. A cigar would represent a big male phallus, I guess. So what do you think about that? Because I do see a lot of Christian men who say something against cigarettes, but they smoke cigars.
I occasionally, twice a year, will smoke a cigar, I would say. I don't know what to think about it, because I think cigar smoking is just as unhealthy as cigarette smoking. But people, I don't think, are smoking a pack of cigars a day like they do cigarettes. I'm gonna have to. I can't give him an informed answer on that. I'm gonna have to do some research and really think about what I think about cigar smoking. A lot of my friends are into it. I don't know what I think about that, but a couple times, 2 or 3 times a year, I'll share a cigar. Tyler and Gaston, the guys I'm in partnership here with, the Blaze, they like cigars, and whenever I go to Dallas or they come here, we'll have a cigar and maybe have a cocktail or something. I got to give that some more thought. Shemeka, we're done for today. You look awesome. We'll play tomorrow,
Thank you.
and we'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. we want freedom. I just want, I wanna be, I just want, I wanna be, I just want, I wanna be, I just